Hey guys, my name is Naguura, and today we're gonna do an M+ commentary about Mists of Tirna Scythe plus 19. It was a Tyrannical dungeon. I did it last idea. I'm gonna try in the future to do these kind of videos early on in the idea, because so far I've been doing the videos at the end of the idea, and then it might not be helping you anymore. I guess it would still be helping you in the future because it's a Tyrannical key and the other affixes are not as impactful. So whenever there's a Tyrannical key, this video is still very relevant, but I'm just gonna try to switch this up for the future. So this is going to be the last video I do at the end of the idea with these affixes. The next time I'm going to be trying to upload a video as soon as the idea starts, so you guys see how I am playing the affixes of the week. But yeah, let's get to it. I'm playing a Mist key here. On my Moonkin, I'm playing with Smok on Rest Shaman. Then we have a Hunter, a Warlock, Affliction Warlock, and a Vengeance Demon Hunter. We have a Night Fee here, so that's why we're opening the cage immediately. And we're doing a really big pull here to start, so I'm very likely going to use my cooldowns. So I'll just wait until he has them gathered up. Once they're gathered, I apply my Sunfire, and I just immediately pop my cooldowns, as you can see here. I did not apply any Moonfires preemptively. That's something I did in the past in some other keys, but this is a Tyrannical environment. And on Tyrannical, the mobsters have less HP, so in my opinion, the bigger the pack is, the less worth it is to pre-apply your Moonfires before you convoke. Now, after I was done convoking, I put down my trees, making sure I taunt everything off of the tank because it was enraging. And then I just finish off the pack. You see, I was topping the damage actually on this pack just because I just used everything at the start. We didn't use Bloodlust here, which probably would have made the Hunter do more damage than me if he would have gotten that Bloodlust, because Hunters scale really well with haste, while Moonkin does not. But yeah, so we're done with this pack. I used all of my cooldowns there. I used my trees, of course, to taunt the mobs off of the tank with the raging, and I just Starfalled once the pack was dead to make sure I keep my AoE up. And once my cooldowns were gone, once my Convoke was gone, I also tried to apply my dots as well. Now we're stealthing past this next trash group. We're getting the buffs here from the Night Fae. This is a stat buff, so it's really, really nice. Here at this point, we're pulling this pack, and these Soul Cleavers actually are pretty scary for the tank, and the Harvesters are pretty scary for the group. The Soul Cleavers, they apply a debuff on the tank that does an initial damage, and it also leaves a debuff behind that increases all damage taken by, I think, 20% or something, but it's definitely really scary because not only does the Soul Cleaver itself does a lot of damage, but also it does a stacking magic debuff that increases the damage taken by the tank by other mobs as well. So that's why trees are really good here. If you put down your trees, then the trees are actually soaking those Soul Cleaver casts, which gives the tank a lot of room to breathe, so he doesn't have to have these debuffs on him, no damage increase, and so on. So make sure you time your trees right to make sure you get the Soul Cleaver in the trees. Going back real quick to talk about how I dealt with this pack damage-wise. Usually when you engage a pack, you want to have Astral Power going in. So that's why at the end of the previous pack, you pull some Astral Power, you don't use all of it when you know they're about to die. So you have some Astral Power for Starfall as you enter the next pack. But this time, it took us a long time to engage this pack because we finished off the last pack, then we had to stealth past a trash pack, we had to go in here, get the buffs, and it was just too long for me to keep my Astral Power. So that's why I'm engaging this pack without Astral Power. I'm immediately entering a Lunar Eclipse here because I can enter either one of the eclipses. And if I can enter either one, I will go into Lunar Eclipse first because that's just better for AoE. Then I'm applying my Moonfires because there's 4 mobs. If there would be more than 4 mobs, I would not be applying my Moonfire in Lunar Eclipse, okay? On 5 or more mobs, you never Moonfire in Lunar Eclipse, you just Starfire in Lunar Eclipse. You apply your Moonfires in Solar Eclipse. But since there are only 4 mobs, I did apply my Moonfire in Lunar Eclipse, and then I just spent Starfire for the rest of my time, and of course I keep Starfall up at all times. And as soon as I leave my Eclipse, I enter the next Eclipse, because if you're in Eclipse, your dots and your Starfall and everything does more damage, so you just constantly want to be in Eclipse, and that's what you see me doing right here. So now I'm pulling a bit of Astral Power. So you can see I'm 80 Astral Power as we're leaving this pack because I want to have enough Astral Power as we enter this next pack. So now I'm applying some dots and I'm starfalling, and then I'm entering my eclipse as soon as I can. So now I'm casting 2 starfires to enter my solar eclipse. I'm also using 1 star surge, actually 2 star surges, which was a mistake. I should have only casted 1, because now you can see that my starfall actually dropped for a decent amount of time. My starfall dropped for like 3 or 4 seconds, which is not good, because you want your starfall up at all times as soon as there's 2 targets. And there are 2 targets. So I should have only star surged once and kept the rest of my astral power to make sure I can keep my starfall up. So that was actually a mistake I did there. Just keep in mind, whenever there's more than 1 target, you want to keep starfall up. So definitely do not waste your astral power into star surges unless you know that you can get enough astral power for starfall, even with the star surge that you casted. So if I only would have casted 1 star surge there, it would have been fine. But I casted 2, and I didn't have enough astral power for starfall. So that was my mistake there. Make sure you don't make the same mistake. Definitely look at the astral power and see if you can keep it up 100% of the time or not. So now we're triggering the Pride manifestation here. I usually try to pool astral power for the Pride mob. Because the Pride mob does a lot of damage, especially if you do on high keys. And if no one has cooldowns for this either costs a wipe, or your healer has to use a lot of defensives to survive if it's not dying quickly. So I definitely want to make sure I do as much damage as I can to this mob without using my cooldowns, because my cooldowns are of course very valuable, and we're doing a boss right after, so it's incredibly important for me to have my cooldowns on the boss, of course. So just try to do as much damage as you can to this Pride mob without using your cooldowns. Alright, so on this boss, I'm focusing the Et, because once that dies, you can DPS the boss because he's got a damage increase, and this is how you kill the fight. So the idea is that you want to kill this mob, the Et, and then use all of your cooldowns on the boss. But the higher the key, the harder it actually is to kill this Et in time. As you can see, our Pride, do you see the Pride debuff that we have? It's only 10 seconds left at this point. And we're only gonna get like 6 seconds of the Pride buff into this into the boss. So thankfully I did get lucky there, and I got a full moon right at the start. I popped my cooldowns immediately as soon as the boss was attackable, as soon as the Et died, sorry, because I saw how close the Pride buff was to fall off, and I wanted to make sure that my Celestial Alignment and my Convoke goes into that Pride buff. So that's why I immediately used my cooldowns as soon as the Et died. And you can see how low the boss got, considering we didn't even have the Pride buff. We only had it for like 5 to 6 seconds. I also got a full moon, so I was a little bit lucky there. I got a full moon in like the first 2 seconds, so I probably crit as well, and that's why I'm doing so much damage. But we didn't get the boss low enough, so we have to kill the Et one more time, and then we should theoretically have enough damage. We'll see. But yeah, on this boss, you definitely just want to make sure you are saving your big cooldowns for the boss itself, and not necessarily use it for the Et unless you don't have enough damage. Because sometimes, if you have to kill the Et 2 times, no matter what, then you might as well just use your cooldowns on the Et, right? If you think about it. It always depends on how much damage you have. Because if you have to kill the Et 2 times, no matter how much damage, or no matter if you use your cooldowns on the boss or not, then it doesn't matter. And then you can just use your cooldowns on the Et to get out of this phase faster, if the other people in your group have huge cooldowns for the boss anyway, right? I personally don't think that a Moonkin should ever use cooldowns on both, like when the Et is up, just because of how Convoke works, right? Convoke hits random targets. So I think if you use your Convoke on the Et, half the damage is just going to go into the boss, and it's just like pretty wasted damage in my opinion. When the Et is dead, then the boss is the only target, and therefore your Convoke guaranteed goes into the boss. And that's why I think Convoke is a specific cooldown that is much better to use on the boss than it is on the Et. But there are some other cooldowns in the game, like other classes, that could push the Et faster, so you can use your cooldowns on the boss with the Pride debuff up, right? Because there's certain classes who do a huge amount of burst damage, and classes who do not. So those kind of classes who don't have this huge single target burst, they should be the ones who make sure that the ad dies quick enough, and maybe even use their cooldowns on the ad if it's like a high Tyrannical key. Because if no one uses the cooldowns on the ad and no one's doing any damage to it, then you can even wipe to this, because look how long this is taking us to kill the ad here in this moment. I assume no one's using their cooldowns on the ad, and you can see how there's pools everywhere. We're all taking a lot of damage, everyone's struggling, and it turned out we actually needed 3 phases on the boss instead of just 2, because we had so little damage on the second one. We had almost all of our damage on the first when I used my Celestial Lament and my Convoke, and then on the second we barely had any damage, and that's why we needed 3 phases. Alright, so moving on to the maze part of this dungeon. I'm unlocking this graveyard here. If you're a Night Fae, you can click on this, and then you click on activate, and then this is a graveyard. So if you die, you release here instead of at the entrance. This is really important. Make sure you do this if you're a Night Fae. Otherwise, you're definitely wasting a lot of time. All right, so now we pulled... I'll show you this again. So when you start this maze, you can actually pull the right group through the wall so you can fight 2 groups at the same time. I think our hunter did it in this case, but multiple classes can pull it through the wall. That's why we have so many mobs here. Usually there's only 2 mobs, but if you pull from the right side out, then you get all of these mobs at the same time. So here I'm starting my rotation by going into Lunar Eclipse, and you can see how I'm not applying Moonfires, because I'm in Lunar Eclipse, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mobs. There's too many mobs for me to apply Moonfire. So if this situation is happening, if you're about to enter Lunar Eclipse, and there's 6 or more mobs, 5 or more mobs even, then you do not apply Moonfire in Solar Eclipse. You do apply Sunfire though. So I applied Sunfire. Now I'm going into Lunar Eclipse. I'm Starfalling. And then I'm just Starfiring. You see, I'm just spamming Starfire. I'm not doing anything else, except keeping up my Starfall, of course. And once I go into Solar Eclipse, then is the time where I would apply my Moonfires, unless the ads die too quickly. If the ads die too quickly, then I will just spam Starfire in Solar Eclipse as well, instead of casting my dots. You only Starfire in Solar Eclipse if there's a lot of ads up, so otherwise you're just dotting, yeah? Depends on the kill time as well. If the ads are alive for a really long time, then I probably would apply my Moonfires in Solar Eclipse, even if there's a lot of ads. But if they die in a really quick, like if they die really quickly, then I don't waste my time applying Moonfires in Solar Eclipse. Then I just make sure I'm casting Starfires if there's a lot of ads, or Solar Wrath if there's not that many ads. All right, so we're moving on. The maze in this dungeon. So here's the thing. If you play Moonkin, I think Moonkins are the #1 class to do the maze. Because in most of the time, the healers are doing the maze. Because you lose the least damage if the healer does it. But the problem is, healers do damage as well, right? But if they're looking for the maze, they don't. If you're a Moonkin, you can do damage while walking around because you have Stellar Drift. So you just keep Starfall up and you can walk around doing the maze, and your group loses no damage. Because you still do damage, your healer does damage, everyone else does damage. So in my opinion, Moonkins are the very best to do the maze. And that's why if you play Moonkin, you should learn how to do this maze. And there's a very nice trick that I got from Growl. Growl is like the smartest person I know. And I will link his video in the description below, where he explains his idea behind how to solve the maze. But I'm just going to give you a quick TLDR. If you want to know exactly how it works and how to do the maze, then you should check out the Growl video that I will link in the description below. And otherwise, the gist of it is that you look at the first symbol as you enter the room. So let's say you enter the room and you see an empty leaf that has no circle. So now you're trying to find a second symbol that has 2 attributes in common with the first symbol that you saw. Okay, so we have a leaf that is empty and it has no circle. So you're looking for a symbol that has 2 attributes in common. So it's either an empty leaf with a circle, then it's empty and it's a leaf, the 2 attributes that are in common. Or you find an empty flower without a circle, then they're both empty and they both don't have a ring, right? And if you find this symbol that has 2 attributes in common with the first one, then you know that the exit is the opposite of those 2 attributes that they have in common. So if you found, like if the first one is an empty flower without a ring, and the second one is an empty leaf without a ring, then you know the 2 attributes that are in common is empty and no ring. So the exit is going to be a filled flower or leaf with a ring, okay? Just to show you on the next pull, this one was a really quick pull, so it was hard to figure out. But this one is like a leaf that is, oh, they already found the exit, never mind. So if you're a Moonkin, I personally definitely recommend doing this and finding the correct symbol just to help out your team. But it's definitely not helping if multiple people are doing it, right? Like if you have the healer doing it and you're doing it and the tank is doing it, then you're just wasting time. So in my opinion, just make sure, if you're very confident in your ability to do this mace as a Moonkin, then I would say at the start of the group, say, hey guys, I'm going to do the mace. I'm losing no damage, and I'm very confident in knowing the answer every time, right? So go ahead and watch Growl's video and make sure you're testing your skills a little bit. On mythictrap.com, there's like a maze that you can do as a practice. And just go ahead and do that and test it out a couple of times. And if you're very confident in your abilities, then just let your group know that you're doing this. All right, so that was enough about the maze. Let's go back to how I'm playing this dungeon. Let me explain what happened here. So, you see I am a 1, you see this number 1, this tiny number 1 here? It means that I am 1 solar wrath away from lunar eclipse. So, I'm 1 solar wrath away from lunar eclipse, and there's, I believe, 5 or 6 ads. So, the natural course that I should be doing there is apply Sunfire if they're all stacked. If not, apply Starfall, enter the eclipse, and just Starfire. Make sure my Sunfire is up, make sure my Starfall is up, and then just Starfire, right? That would be the natural course. But what I'm doing here is really weird, because I just, looks like I'm entering Eclipse, and then I'm star searching twice, even though there's 5 ads. And then I apply Moonfires, which is also very awkward. But then I realized what happened. I was preparing for my cooldowns. You can see my Convoke and my Celestial Alignment is ready, and I'm basically just preparing for my cooldowns by dumping my Astral Power into Star Surges, not Starfall, and then I'm applying my Moonfires to make sure Convoke doesn't apply the Moonfires. So here's the thought process behind all of this, right? First of all, you want to dump as much Astral Power as you can before you Convoke, but you don't want to Starfall, because Convoke, 99% of the time, Convoke applies Starfall. But if you already have Starfall up, then Convoke does not apply Starfall. And Starfall is your most valuable ability that your Convoke can cast after full moon. Because Starfall costs 50 Astral Power, and of course it's your best AoE spell. So having your Convoke apply Starfall is much more valuable than it be casting like another Star Search or another Wrath. So that's why it's decently important to make sure you're dumping your Astral Power before you cast your Convoke. Otherwise, you would be overcapping Astral Power, or you wouldn't be casting Starfall with your Convoke, which is also a time loss. So that's why I made sure to dump my Astral Power, and I didn't just dump my Astral Power. I entered Eclipse and then dumped my Astral Power. Because if you're going to be Star Surging, then you might as well make use of your Balance of All Things, right? Because why not? Since you're using it anyway and you're getting the crit. So that's why I entered Eclipse first, dumped my Astral Power into Star Surges that are buffed by my boat, and then I Balance of All Things boat, and then I applied my Moonfires onto the targets, because I figured if I'm applying my Moonfires, then my Convoke doesn't. And that's good, because Moonfire is definitely a spell that you do not prefer your Convoke casting, right? You would much rather have your Convoke cast Star Surges, Starfall, Full Moon, Solar Wraths, rather than casting other abilities. One more thing I wanted to mention real quick about Convoke is the fact that a lot of people have this misunderstanding of how Convoke works. they think Convoke, they think you lose damage if you cast Convoke in melee, because it casts Rake and Thrash if you're in melee. And it is true that you are casting Rake and Thrash in melee if you cast Convoke there, but it's not true that you're losing damage, because the Rake and the Thrash that you're casting if you're in melee is not replacing Moonkin abilities, but it's replacing off-spec abilities. So the way Convoke works is that Convoke always casts a certain amount of Moonkin abilities if you're in Moonkin form, and always casts a certain amount of off-spec abilities. Okay, we have 16 casts in total, and there's going to be always at least 10 Moonkin abilities that it casts, no matter what you do, as long as you're in Moonkin form. So if you're in melee or in range or wherever you are, it will always cast 10 Moonkin abilities as long as there's an attackable target. And the rest of the abilities will always be off-spec abilities, no matter what you do. Of course, it depends a little bit on, if someone is low, it will cast more heals over Rakes. If you're in melee range, it will cast Thrash and Rake instead of healing abilities. But they will never replace Moonkin abilities, okay? So a Swiftment will never replace a Moonkin ability, and a Rejuve will never replace a Moonkin ability, and a Thrash and Rake will never replace a Moonkin ability. So keep that out of your mind. You can totally use your Convoke in melee. In fact, it's even better to use it in melee, because Thrash and Rake, they're not doing a lot of damage. They're doing very little damage for you as a Moonkin, but it's better than no damage at all, right? Because if you're unranged, then you Convoke cast healing spells, right? And healing spells do 0 damage. So if you don't need any heal whatsoever, then it's actually better to go in melee for Convoke. The only thing you have to keep in mind, though, is that the threshold for you to get aggro is lower in melee than it is unranged. So if you're in melee range and you're casting Convoke, it's a lot easier for you to take aggro as if you're casting it on range. So keep that in mind. Of course, Moonkins are really tanky, and if you have aggro for one mob, it's not going to be the end of the world. You're not going to immediately die. But just keep in mind that if you cast Convoke in melee, you still want to take a look at your aggro. If you get aggro, maybe put trees down or disengage out to make sure your tank has enough time to get them back, and so on. All right, so while I was explaining Convoke, I actually died to this boss here, Mistcaller. I made a mistake by, I think I got sandwiched a little there in the intermission phase. This boss is actually kind of difficult on explosive week, because when you're doing the maze part, the intermission phase of this boss, then the wrong symbols also spawn explosives. At the same time, the boss is casting snowballs and you need to dodge and so on. So that's, I believe, why I died. I'm going to go back to show you my mistake. One more thing I wanted to mention about this boss. Do not use your Convoke in the intermission phase. I think it should be pretty obvious, but it's just such a huge waste of damage. Convoke specifically is just not very good for this fight, unfortunately, because the intermission phase is very important, right? You need to kill this correct as fast as possible, because your group takes a lot of AoE damage. So theoretically, it's really good to go through this phase fast, but unfortunately, Moonkins just don't have any good cooldowns for it. So just don't use your Convoke there. I actually used it there, right? As I said to not use it. I think the reason why I used it there was because we were wiping and I wanted to make sure we're getting it done. But yeah, if you have a choice at all, if you're not about to wipe or whatever, then definitely don't use your Convoke in this intermission phase. It's just a huge amount of damage loss. And you can even see it as I used it here. I think I used it before or after I died. I'm not really sure. But first, let's look at my death. So we're in the intermission phase. Okay, so this was a little bit unlucky, because you see what happens here. We get 3 explosives spawning on the off targets. You see, there's 1, 2, 3 explosives, and I guess I was trying to finish off these explosives. I was trying to target them with my Moonfires, and then a freeze tag spawned right behind me, and at the same time the snowballs came from the front. So I guess I was just like being a little bit overwhelmed here with all of the mechanics happening at the same time, with, you know, explosive snowballs, fixate, like everything was just like happening all at once. But yeah, so I used my cooldowns right as I got a rest, because I was just afraid that we are gonna wipe, right? Because I made a mistake, so I'm dead. We can see explosives everywhere. You see the et that we're supposed to kill is still like 40% HP, and people are just low HP everywhere. So I guess that's why I just kind of like panic pressed my CDs to make sure we're not wiping in this intermission phase. But when I press my CDs, you can see I'm pressing it right here, and you see how many of my spells are going into like the wrong target or into the boss. I mean, the boss is also the wrong target because the boss takes no damage. So it's such a bad ability, unfortunately, to cast here. You can see some of my rafts are going over there, and some of my Star Surges are going into the wrong targets. But thankfully, we did manage to get it down. I'm resting the Hunter back up that died as well in the intermission phase. And now, thankfully, we can still finish off this boss without any further problems. We're out of battle rasts at this point, because we used both rasts during this fight for me and for the Hunter. So we gotta be really careful moving on further into this fight. Now, one more thing about this boss that some people don't know is that the intermission phase is percentage based, okay? It doesn't matter how long this boss lasts, you will always get the same amount of intermission phases. They will always be percentage health based. So this theoretically means that you're not in a hurry to get the boss lower. Like theoretically, you don't need to use your cooldowns on the boss. You would rather use your cooldowns in the intermission phase, right? Because the intermission phase is the only thing that wipes you and that gets you done faster. Well, getting the boss lower, of course, it will make you do the boss faster. But since you get as many intermission phases, no matter what you do, you can save them for an intermission phase to have it safer. If your class is good for intermission phase damage. Of course, Moonkins are not, as I just mentioned, but other classes are good. So if you play a class that is good for it, then you should probably use your cooldowns for intermission phase. All right, now moving on to the next pack. We're jumping down afterwards, and we're enabling the graveyard again. There's another Night Fae graveyard at the bottom of this waterfall. So make sure you enable the graveyard if you are Night Fae, so you can spawn here if someone dies. Then you can see we have 10 minutes left on the clock, and we still need quite a bit of trash, 37% of trash. So that means 2 pride mobs still, and the boss. Well, we're skipping this pack because we don't need the percentage of it, and we're doing quite a big pull here. I do not have my cooldowns ready. So I'm just applying some Moonfires as we're pulling. So here is the reasoning why I'm doing this, right? Because I know I know the pull. The tank pulled the right side and the left side, and now the adds are slowly gathering up. So I'm applying Moonfire as he's gathering the mobs, because my Sunfire doesn't spread because the mobs are too far apart. So I don't want to waste globals on Sunfire if I have to apply it later anyway when they're stacked, right? So I'm applying Moonfires as they walk in, and then when they're stacked, I'm going to apply my Sunfire to make sure I'm not wasting any Sunfire globals, and then I'm making sure I'm doing damage once they're stacked. I don't want to go all out during this like gathering phase, because the tank has very little aggro on the adds as this is happening, so that's why I'm not like trying to Starfall go too ham. So that's why I'm just applying some Moonfires, applying Sunfire here, and now I'm going into Eclipse as soon as I can, I guess. I'm killing some explosives as well, because I don't have cooldowns, so I'm just letting the other people do the damage, right? So that's why I focus a little bit on making sure I kill explosives, because we can see the Hunter used his cooldowns here. I actually just almost died, getting hit by something, I believe. So that was kind of cool. I'm also helping dispelling the raging on the mobs with my Soothe. I'm trying to, specifically on this packs, Moonkins are really good at helping the healer. Because first of all, there's a lot of poison effects that are happening from the stingers or whatever they're called, the flying insects that you're pulling. They charge your player and give a poison effect that stacks those reverse, exactly. Those debuffs you can dispel as a Moonkin, and it's actually incredibly important that you do so, specifically when people have like a double stack or something. So here, we are not actually in voice chat. Funnily enough, we did this key without voice chat. So at this point, he only pulled those Reavers. And those Reavers, they're dangerous because of this poison effect that I just mentioned. But I have my cooldowns, so I set in party chat, I have CDs, pull all, right? Because I knew that I'm just going to use my cooldowns, so everything's going to die quickly, and I can dispel the poison, or I can help my healer dispel the poison, so it shouldn't be a big issue. So now the tank goes and pulls all. I'm dumping my astral power a little here. Then I'm using my cooldowns. It's using my Convoke. You can see doing quite a bit of damage here, making sure I'm Star Surging off my excess astral power, making sure I Starfall, making sure I kill explosives, and now I'm dispelling. You can see I dispelled Smock there with that poison that he had on him, and then I'm just Starfiring the rest of the time, making sure my Starfall stays up. Going into Eclipse again as soon as it drops. You can see I'm casting 2 Solar Rafts, making sure getting Lunar Eclipse. Then I'm dispelling the Hunter, making sure it's off. And one more thing that I need to know about, or need to note about raging in particular, is that, oh, I actually died. Oh my, I'm so bad. Oh, I died twice in this key. Oh my god. Let me see why we died here. Okay, so this thing's... Oh, okay. Okay, that was a bit unfortunate. So, what happened there was that there's a swirly that spawned underneath me, and it looked like I was trying to finish the cast and then disengage out of the swirly, but it's like behind me is a hill, like it's going uphill, and then my disengage didn't go the full length, it just stopped halfway. So I was still standing in the swirly after my disengage. You can see right here, I finished the cast, I disengaged, and unfortunately I just got stuck at the hill. Oh well, that's a little bit unfortunate. But what I wanted to say is that it's actually very important that you're soothing the Reavers, okay? Because there's a lot of different mobs that have raging on them, and sometimes you just dispel whatever mob, right? But depending on what pack you're playing, it's really crucial that you dispel specific mobs, okay? And in this pack, in my opinion, the most important mobs to dispel are the Reavers, because the Reavers put a poison on people, and when they're raging, then the poison does more damage, right? Because the raging effect applies to everything that the mob does. That's something a lot of people don't understand either. When a mob is raging, they don't only do more tank damage. They also do more damage with all of their other abilities that they do. So bleeds that they applied tick for more damage. Poison debuffs they applied tick for more damage, and so on. So that's why it's really important to see, I'm soothing a Reaver right here. I just soothed this Reaver, meaning that the poison effects that he applies do less damage. And I'm still helping out to dispel the rest of the Reaver's damage here. Let's just watch me die one more time, because it was so pretty the first time. Unfortunately, this is actually a really bad death because the Pride Mob spawned. So this is actually double bad. Thankfully, I do have stealth and I can go past this pack. Otherwise, it would have been triple worse, because then I wouldn't even have gotten back in time. But now I'm getting back, thankfully. Everyone's still alive. You can see Smock is pretty low on mana, and we are not in voice chat, so he can't call Innervates, but he called it in group chat. So I gave him Innervate right here. That's also something, if you're not on voice chat with your team, then definitely keep an eye on your healer during those Pride mobs to make sure that you give him Innervate while you're fighting the Pride mob, because afterwards they don't need it anymore. And make sure you're doing as much damage as you can onto the Pride mob as well. If you're Moonkin specifically, so here I'm actually I'm helping to heal a little, actually. Because, so here's the thing. If you run out of damage as a Moonkin, then I think it's definitely okay to heal with Heart of the Wild. But the longer you're fighting the Pride mob, the more damage it does to the group. So theoretically, as a damage dealer, you want to do as much damage, right? And if you start healing as a Moonkin, then you're not doing damage anymore, and the mob doesn't die faster, right? So it's always a little bit of a questionable thing, like, should I be healing or should I do damage? Like, what should I be doing, right? Because you can help your healer, but then the mob doesn't die as fast. But in my personal opinion, if you're running out of like damage, if you don't have any high astral power or whatever is going on, and you just feel like you can't be doing a lot of damage to the mob, then I think it's really good, as long as you do have Heart of the Wild, to help out on healing if you run Rest Affinity Heart of the Wild, because then you actually heal a lot, and those heals actually do quite a lot. As you can see, I'm just spamming heals. I popped my Heart of the Wild when I saw that everyone's dropping incredibly low. You see, the hunter at some point used his turtle because he was dropping so low, and the mob is still really high because I died. So I wasn't there at the start, meaning that we're just missing damage on this mob. So everyone's dropping low. I can see the tank almost died. So at this point, I'm like thinking, okay, I'm just using all my astral power. Then I pop Heart of the Wild, and then I just help heal. I'm just regrowthing, wild growthing. Unfortunately, I got hit by a thing here, but I had my friends at regen conduit ready, thankfully. It's really good. Well-honed mind. Really, really good. And you can see how we thankfully managed to get this done with me helping the heals a little bit, and then the 2 damage dealers finished off the pack. So now we're pulling the next pack. I am entering Solar Eclipse. I'm making sure my Starfall is up, my Sandfire is up, and then I'm just trying to kill explosives a little and just putting Moonfires, as many as I can, before I exit Solar Eclipse already. Then we're going into Lunar Eclipse again. I'm making sure my Starfall is up, and then I'm taunting here as they're all raging. I always try to save my trees during raging until the very end, right? Because when all of the mobs are raging at the same time, the tank can't really tank them anymore. He needs to start kiting, right? And if you have trees, then you can delay the tank's kiting or make it easier for the tank to kite, right? Because if you put the trees down once they're raging, then the tank has like a bunch of seconds to get distance between him and the trash. So you give the tank some breathing room where he can actually just decide, oh, you know what, I'm just going to start kiting now while the trees are tanking. So once they're dead, the mobs are going to run to me. And if your tank doesn't feel like he needs to kite, then he can just continue to do damage to the ads while the trees are tanking, which increases the total damage of your group, right? Because then your healer can do damage, because if the trees are tanking, no one is going to take damage unless they do group damage. So your healer is doing more damage, your tank is doing more damage if you can still stay in and DPS, and your group is doing more damage because the ads are staying stacked up so you can cleave instead of them going apart and you losing damage. So we have 5 minutes left. It's actually kind of a closed key, but now we're done with trash. We're spawning this last pride mob. I have all of my cooldowns ready here. I'm going to be saving them for the boss, very likely. I very highly doubt I'm going to use this on a pride mob unless someone calls for it. We also have Bloodlust available in 37 seconds. So I'm making sure to do as much damage as I can on this pride mob, but not using my cooldown so I can make sure I have it for the boss. You can see I'm also using, of course, I'm trying to use my defensives as much as I can. We have a Warlock here, so we have Healthstones, which is really nice. Make sure you use them. Unfortunately, I ran out of Healthstones, and we're not in voice comm, so I can't communicate to the Warlock to put another Soul Well. But I used my health pot here, as you can see, because I was dropping a bit low and I wanted to relieve the healer. And I knew I don't need the health pot for the boss, I just need it for this pride mob. So now I'm on high Astra power, I'm entering Eclipse and dumping 3 Star Surges into the boss. So at this point, it looks like I am saving my cooldowns for my potion, because Pride is up and my potion is ready in 4 seconds. So I figured it's better to wait so I can line up everything. So I'm using potion and then I'm using cooldowns. Now I have Pride, Bloodlust, Potion, Trinket, and cooldown. So this was like the best. I had all buffs basically for this one. Now on this boss, I wanted to tell you something because from now on I'm just doing my single target rotation, which should be pretty obvious. If you don't know exactly how to do a single target rotation for Moonkins, then I recommend you watch my Moonkin guide that I have uploaded on my YouTube channel, where I'm explaining exactly how I do my single target rotation. But yeah, to this boss specifically, there's one common mistake that a lot of people do, and it's how they deal with these green pools on the floor. The way this mechanic works is that there's always one extra green pool that spawns. So first it's 1 green pool, then it's 2, then it's 3, then it's 4, then it's 5, and so on, right? It will always be 1 extra. And the position of where the pool spawns depends on how you dodged the very previous one. So the way you want to do this is the way I am doing it right here, and it's to not do any like fast or far movements to dodge it, because see at the start when we only have 1 pool, you see there's 1 pool, and now I'm just doing a very small sidestep. I'm not moving far at all. You see, like I made the tiniest step to the side. And now I show you why I did this and why I didn't make any sudden movements. Now, if you take a look at the second spawn of the pools, there will be 1 pool underneath my character and 1 pool to the left. Okay? So this way, all of the pools stay very like contained, and I don't have like a million pools all over the place, and I don't have to move far. So see, the next time I see there's 1 underneath, 1 to the left, and I dodge to the right. Only 1 step. And if you do it this way, then you always know exactly where they're going to spawn. Because this time I dodged to the right, and the last time I dodged to the left. So the next time they spawn, I know, well, I just need to dodge 1 step forward or 1 step backwards. And it looked like I went 1 step forward. So the next time this happens, I need to dodge 1 step backwards or 1 diagonally forward or diagonally right or left, right? So this seems like much more complicated than it really is, but there can be huge problems if you're not doing it this way. Like if you're blinking away or you're like sprinting away from these pools, then your pools are going to be spawning like really far apart, and they might annoy other people, right? Like all of a sudden, there might be a pool that spawned from you, spawning on another player, because the last time you dodged it, you blinked away. So your pool will be like behind, below your character, and like 30 yards in the front. And then all of a sudden, one of your pools is hitting the tank, because the last time you dodged it, you blinked out of it, right? So if you do it this way, all of your green pools are just going to be a lot more contained. It's a lot easier to see where they're going. It's easier for you. It's easier for your team. So that's why I definitely recommend doing it this way. All right, and that's it really. Like, just finishing off the rest of this fight here. I'm helping a little bit with these larvae. One thing you can do on Mythic is you can just see the larvae. You can just root them forever. You can paralyze them forever. You can sleep them. You can just see them so you don't have to deal with it. But this week we had explosive. And if you root them in a corner, then they will still spawn explosive, right? So that's why we actually had to kill them, and they helped out a little. I looked at the timer of the key, and I saw we still have like 2 minutes left. So we had more than enough time to do this key. So I was just helping out with the ad damage to make sure we played safer rather than risky going on a boss or whatever, because I saw we have enough time anyway. If the timer would have been closer, I probably would have made sure that I'm just going on a boss and ignoring the larvae and hope we don't die to explosive. But in this case, it was the best way for me to just help out, making sure we don't get random explosives everywhere, and making sure we just kill a larvae off, and then we do the boss. All right, so that was it about this dungeon. I really hope this commentary helped you out with things that you were wondering about for Moonkin specifically, or maybe for a Mists key specifically. If there's anything else that you want me to talk about while I go through these dungeons, definitely make sure you tell me in the comments below, because there's so much to talk about. Sometimes I don't even know what I should be mentioning, right? Because if you want me to talk more about the dungeon itself, I can do that as well. Like if you want me to talk about boss abilities, trash abilities, like any other things that I should be mentioning more than about Moonkin stuff, then I can do that too. Unfortunately, I just really can't talk about everything, because otherwise I just don't have enough time. I will just be doing the next trash pack as I'm still talking about 5 trash packs before. So I'm just trying to focus on Moonkin playstyle specifically and what I am doing, but I can definitely make other videos as well where I'm talking about the dungeon in itself rather than the Moonkin playstyle if you're interested in that. If you want me to focus way more about the Moonkin playstyle, then I can also do that. Because once in a while I did talk about utility stuff and healing and off healing and just anything you need to do in a dungeon. But if you want me to purely focus on damage specifically, then I can also do that. Just let me know in the comments below, or you can hop over at twitch.tv/Naguura and just ask me any questions there, or talk to me about your suggestions. I also have a Discord channel with YouTube content ideas, with a channel that is called YouTube Content Ideas. So if you want to go there and give me any sort of suggestions for future videos, then you're more than welcome to do so. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys very much. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. That would be really, really appreciated. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.